I've always been drawn to the darker corners of history, and Pendle Hill is one place that has captivated me for years. Nestled in the heart of Lancashire, England, this foreboding hill has a reputation that precedes it, a place where the living are not welcome, and the wind whispers eerie warnings to those who dare to listen. As I sit here, surrounded by the dim glow of my laptop screen, I can feel the weight of Pendle Hill's dark legend settling around me like a shroud. It's a feeling that's hard to shake, and one that I've tried to ignore for far too long. But tonight, with the full moon hanging low in the sky, I find myself compelled to recount the events that have led me to this place. Events that will test my resolve, push me to the limits of sanity, and possibly even seal my fate. Pendle Hill is a place where the fabric of reality seems to unravel, revealing a twisted world that exists just beyond the edge of our perception. It's a world where the dead walk, and the wind carries the whispers of the damned. I've heard the stories, of course, who hasn't? But it's one thing to hear them from a distance, and another altogether to experience them firsthand. And now, as I stand at the threshold of this dark legend, I'm not sure if I'll be able to turn back. All I can do is take the first step into the unknown and see where the darkness takes me. I stepped out of my car and onto the crumbling asphalt of Pendle Hill's parking lot, the dim light of the setting sun casting long shadows across the deserted landscape. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a morbid perfume that clung to my skin like a shroud. I'd been driving for hours, the GPS leading me further and further away from civilization, until finally I'd arrived at the hill's base. It was as if the car had dropped off here, leaving me stranded in this desolate place. I felt a thrill of excitement mixed with trepidation as I gazed up at the hill itself, its rugged peak shrouded in mist, like a ghostly sentinel guarding secrets best left unspoken. My curiosity got the better of me, and I shouldered my backpack, feeling the weight of it settle onto my shoulders like a burden. As I began the ascent, the wind picked up, whispers carried on its breath that seemed to come from all directions at once. "Turn back now," it whispered, "while you still can." But I didn't listen. Not yet. The trees seemed to close in around me as I climbed higher, their branches creaking ominously above my head like skeletal fingers. My footsteps echoed through the stillness, the only sound in a world that seemed to be holding its breath. And then, just as I was starting to feel a sense of unease, the wind died down, and an unsettling silence fell over me. It was as if Pendle Hill itself was waiting for something or someone. My heart racing, I pushed on, driven by a morbid fascination with this place, and the darkness that lurked within its depths. As I climbed higher, the air grew thick with an eerie, unsettling atmosphere. It was as if the very fabric of reality had become twisted and distorted, like a funhouse mirror reflecting my own sanity back at me. The trees seemed to loom over me, their branches creaking and swaying in the wind like skeletal fingers. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unblinking eyes were trained on me from the shadows. Every step I took felt heavy, as if the ground itself was pushing back against my feet. I glanced around, but there was nothing to see, just the endless expanse of heather and gorse, stretching out to the horizon like a sea of gold. And yet, despite the desolate landscape, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being herded towards some unknown fate. The wind picked up again, carrying with it a low, mournful sigh that seemed to come from all directions at once. It was a sound that sent shivers down my spine and made me want to turn back, but something about Pendle Hill's dark allure kept me rooted to the spot. As I walked on, the sounds around me grew stranger still. I heard the snapping of twigs like someone was following me, but whenever I turned to look, there was no one there. The rustling of leaves like a figure was moving through the undergrowth, But again, I was alone. And then just as I was starting to feel truly spooked, I heard my own name being whispered on the wind. Emily. It seemed to say over and over again until I felt my skin crawling with fear. Who was calling out to me? And how did they know my name? I stopped dead in my tracks, my ears straining to pinpoint the source of the whisper. The wind carried it away, leaving behind only a faint echo that seemed to hang in the air like a challenge. I took a deep breath and listened again, and this time I could make out the words. "Turn back now," they whispered, "while you still can." The voice was low and raspy, like the rustling of dry leaves or the creaking of old wood. It sent shivers down my spine, but I felt a surge of determination at the same time. I wouldn't be intimidated by some unknown force, not on Pendle Hill. I looked around, trying to see if anyone was watching me, but the wind seemed to have cleared the area. The trees stood motionless, their branches swaying only slightly in the breeze. I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who are you?" I called out into the wind, my voice barely above a whisper. There was no answer, just the rustling of leaves and the creaking of twigs. It was as if the hill itself was laughing at me, taunting me with its secrets. But I refused to back down. I kept walking, my eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of life or movement. The wind whispered warnings in my ear, but I tuned it out, focusing on the sound of my own footsteps echoing off the hillsides. And then, just as I was starting to feel like I'd made some progress, I heard a faint humming noise, like the quiet buzzing of bees. It was coming from up ahead, and it seemed to be getting louder by the second. As I climbed higher, the wind died down, and an unsettling silence fell over me. It was as if Pendle Hill itself was waiting for something or someone. I took a deep breath and began to explore the hill's rugged terrain, searching for any clues about its dark past. The air grew colder with every step, and I could feel a malevolent presence lurking just out of sight. I stumbled upon an ancient stone circle, overgrown with heather and gorse. The stones were covered in moss and lichen, but I could still make out the intricate carvings that seemed to tell a story. As I reached out to touch one of the stones, I felt a jolt of electricity run through my body. Suddenly, visions flooded my mind, tales of ancient rituals and sacrifices, of powerful spirits and ancient curses. I saw the hill as it had been centuries ago, a place of dark power and forbidden knowledge. The stories spoke of a terrible evil that had been unleashed upon the world, an evil that still lingered in the shadows, waiting to strike. I heard whispers of a witch who had lived on the hill, a woman named Morgan Le Fay, who was said to have made a pact with the devil himself. Her magic was powerful, but it came at a terrible cost, and eventually she was driven mad by her own darkness. The visions faded, leaving me breathless and shaken. I knew that I had uncovered a piece of Pendle Hill's dark past, and I couldn't help but wonder if I had stumbled into something much bigger than myself. As I continued to explore the hill, I began to feel a growing sense of unease. The wind had died down and an unsettling silence had fallen over me. It was as if Pendle Hill itself was waiting for something or someone. I heard the faintest whisper of footsteps behind me, but whenever I turned to look, there was no one there. The rustling of leaves sounded like footsteps too, but it was impossible to pinpoint where they were coming from. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding in my chest. Every step seemed to take me further into the heart of the hill, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being led deeper into some sort of trap. The noises grew louder, more insistent, until it sounded like a pack of wild animals was closing in around me. I spun around, but there was nothing there, just the wind whispering secrets in my ear. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, telling myself that I was just spooked by the hill's dark history, But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I was being stalked by something unseen, something malevolent. The noises grew louder still until it sounded like my own name was being whispered in my ear. "Emily," it said, "come and play." I spun around, but there was no one there. The wind had died down and an oppressive silence had fallen over me. I knew that I had to get off the hill, but my legs seemed rooted to the spot. I was trapped, and whatever was out there, it was closing in. I felt my grip on reality begin to slip as I delved deeper into the hill's secrets. The wind howled around me, its cries echoing in my mind like a chorus of demons. I stumbled upon an ancient well, hidden away in a secluded valley. The water was murky and black, but I could have sworn I saw movement at the bottom. I peered into the depths, feeling a morbid fascination with the darkness that lurked beneath. As I gazed deeper, the world around me began to distort and blur. The trees seemed to twist and writhe like living things, their branches reaching out to snatch at my clothes. I tried to step back, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. The wind grew stronger, its gusts buffeting me with a malevolent glee. I stumbled backwards, falling into the well with a splash. The water closed over my head like a shroud, and I felt myself being pulled down into the depths. I was drowning in a sea of madness, surrounded by visions that made no sense. I saw Morgan Le Fay standing on the hill, her eyes blazing with an otherworldly power. She reached out to me, her bony fingers closing around my wrist like a vice. "Come and play," she whispered, her voice echoing in my mind long after the water had receded. I was trapped in a world of surreal horrors, where reality was just a distant memory. And yet, despite the terror that gripped me, I felt a twisted sense of wonder. This was what lay at the heart of Pendle Hill, a realm of madness and despair, where the laws of nature were twisted and distorted. I knew then that I would never be able to escape, that I would be forever lost in this labyrinthine world of dreams and nightmares. I stumbled upon a clearing, and in the center of it stood an ancient stone statue. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before. Its face was twisted into a grotesque grimace, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly energy. As I approached, I felt a chill run down my spine. The statue seemed to be staring directly at me, its gaze piercing and malevolent. I tried to step back, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. Suddenly, the wind died down, and an oppressive silence fell over the clearing. I was frozen in terror, unable to move or breathe. And then I saw it, a figure standing just behind the statue. It was tall and imposing, its presence seeming to fill the entire clearing. Its face was deathly pale, with eyes that glowed like embers from a long-dead fire. It reached out a bony hand, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. The figure began to move towards me, its pace slow and deliberate. I knew then that I was doomed. The statue seemed to be watching us both, its eyes glowing with an evil light. I tried to scream, but my voice was caught in my throat. The figure drew closer, its hand reaching out to grab me. And then everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the ground, my head throbbing with pain. The clearing was empty, except for the statue standing watchfully over me. I stumbled to my feet, knowing that I had to get off the hill as fast as I could. But as I looked back at the statue, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Its eyes were no longer glowing. Instead, they seemed to be looking straight through me. I stumbled through the darkness, my heart racing with every step. The wind howled around me, making it impossible to hear anything else. I was alone, completely and utterly alone. The hill seemed to stretch on forever, a vast expanse of twisted trees and jagged rocks that offered no shelter from the elements. I had been walking for hours, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was going in circles. Every path led back to where I started, Every direction only ended in more of the same desolate landscape. Panic began to set in as I realized I was trapped, with no clear way out. The darkness seemed to be closing in around me, suffocating me with its crushing weight. I stumbled and fell, skinning my knee on a jagged rock. As I sat there, rubbing my sore leg, I heard a faint whispering in my ear. It was soft and raspy, like the rustling of dry leaves. "You'll never leave," it said. "This hill will keep you." I spun around, but there was no one there. The voice seemed to come from all around me, echoing off the trees. I knew then that I was truly alone, with no way out. The darkness closed in and everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on a bed of dry leaves, surrounded by towering trees that seemed to stretch up to the sky. A faint moonlight filtered through the branches above, casting eerie shadows on the ground below. I struggled to my feet, my legs shaking with fear. Where was I? How had I gotten here? And most importantly, how could I escape? I stood frozen, my eyes fixed on the moon as it rose higher in the sky. The light was like a cold blade, cutting through the darkness and illuminating the twisted trees around me. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that I was not alone on the hill. Something moved in the shadows, its presence stirring the leaves and making the branches creak ominously. I tried to take a step forward, but my feet seemed rooted to the spot. The moonlight grew brighter, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. I saw movement out of the corner of my eye, a figure, tall and imposing, walking towards me from the darkness. My heart was racing now, pounding in my chest like a drum. I knew that I had to get away, but my legs seemed to be made of lead. The figure drew closer, its face still hidden in the shadows. I could feel its eyes on me, boring into my skin like cold steel. And then, just as it was about to reach out and grab me, everything went white. The moonlight vanished, plunging me back into darkness. When my vision returned, I saw that I was standing at the edge of a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood the figure from my nightmares, the one with eyes that glowed like embers from a long-dead fire. It was closer now, its hot breath on my neck making me shiver with fear. And then, just as all hope seemed lost, I heard a sound, the howling of wolves. The pack had arrived, their cries echoing through the night air and sending shivers down my spine. The figure turned to face them, its eyes flashing with anger. For a moment, it was distracted from me, and I took advantage of the reprieve to make a run for it. I sprinted across the clearing, the wolves closing in behind me like a pack of hungry predators. But as I reached the edge of the hill, I saw something that made my heart stop. A figure waiting for me on the other side, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. I stumbled to a halt, my breath caught in my throat. Who was this new figure? And what did they want from me? I took a step forward, and then another, my feet carrying me towards the unknown with a sense of inevitability. As I reached the top of the hill, the full moon shining down on me like a cold, unforgiving eye, I knew that I was in for the fight of my life. The darkness closed in around me once more, but this time it was different. This time I was ready. As I reached the top of the hill, I felt a chill run down my spine. The air seemed to grow colder, and I could sense a presence behind me. I spun around, but there was no one there. That was when I saw them, a group of shadowy figures, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. They were the vengeful spirits of those who had disappeared before me, their faces twisted in anger and hatred. The figure from my nightmare stood at their center, its eyes fixed on me with a malevolent glare. "You should not have come here," it growled, its voice like a rusty gate. "Now you will join the others." The spirits began to close in around me, their ethereal forms undulating as they moved. I tried to defend myself, but my fists felt like lead and my feet seemed rooted to the spot. The spirits were relentless, their attacks coming from all sides. I stumbled backward, desperate to escape their grasp. But there was no escape. The hills seemed to stretch on forever, with no way out. The spirits continued to assault me, their blows landing with a soft thud that sent shockwaves through my body. I felt myself being pulled down into the depths of the hill, where the darkness was absolute and the cold was palpable. And then, just as all hope seemed lost, everything went white. When my vision returned, I found myself back in the clearing, the spirits nowhere to be seen. But as I looked around, I saw that something was wrong. The trees seemed to have shifted, their branches twisted and gnarled in ways that seemed impossible. And at the center of it all, I saw a figure that looked uncannily like myself. It was me, or at least a version of me from another time. "Welcome back," it said, its voice a mocking echo of my own. "I've been waiting for you." The two of us faced off, our eyes locked in a battle of wills. And then, just as the situation seemed impossible to resolve, everything went black once more. The darkness closed in around me once more, and I felt myself being pulled down into the depths of the hill. The last thing I remembered was the figure from my nightmare standing over me, its eyes blazing with an otherworldly light. And then, everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on the ground, my head throbbing with pain. The clearing was empty, the trees standing tall and still around me. I stumbled to my feet, looking around for any sign of life or escape. But there was nothing, just the wind rustling through the leaves and the distant howling of wolves. I knew then that I had become the latest victim of Pendle Hill's curse. My fate was sealed, and I would join the countless others who had disappeared into the darkness before me. The thought sent a chill down my spine, but I knew it was true. I could feel it in my bones. As I stood there, frozen in terror, I heard the sound of my own screams echoing through the forest. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time, a reminder that I was now a part of Pendle Hill's twisted game. And then everything went black once more. The last thing I remember is the feeling of being pulled down into the depths of the hill, the darkness closing in around me like a shroud. I know that I will never escape, that I will be trapped forever in this living nightmare. This is my fate, and it is a curse that will haunt me for all eternity.